Hello, my name is Deborah Veeder. I am the Adopt-A-Stream Director for the Mississippi Wildlife Federation. What I'm going to teach is aquatics, and what we're going to do is talk about watersheds, non-point source pollution, water quality, and macroinvertebrates, and mapping. A watershed is an area of land that drains to a particular creek, stream, or other water body. There are 10 major watersheds in Mississippi, everything from the Tennessee, North Independent Streams, Tombigbee, Pascagoula, Yazoo, and you need to know what the 10 of them are. Parts of a watershed, riparian zones, which are biologically distinctive areas that border the waterfront. Some of the benefits of a riparian zone are to reduce floods, improve and protect water quality, store water, reduce excessive erosion, and enhance wildlife habitat by providing cover and shade. Another area of watersheds could be a wetland. They also function as a buffer between the land and the water. They are considered transition zones where the flow of the water and the cycling of nutrients and the energy of the sun meet to produce a unique ecosystem. They are characterized by hydrology, hydric soils, and vegetation. Various wetland types. You have swamps, marshes, bogs, and posins. And the value of these, the riparian and wetland areas, are because of their importance or worth as functions to society. And some of the important things that they do are anything from the wildlife habitat, fish habitat, recreation, erosion control, education and research, water quality, storm and flood water storage, stream ecology. We use chemical and biological characteristics when we talk about stream ecology, everything from macroinvertebrates to the water quality testing. Various physical characteristics that work together are anything from soil, streamside vegetation, its slope, how it goes down the slope of the area, human activity, temperature, rainfall. Now, different types of pollution, what we have is point source and non-point source pollution. Point source pollution comes from a single identifiable point, like a pipe coming out of a factory or a water treatment plant. Non-point source pollution is polluted runoff. It comes when it usually rains, and it comes from all over the place, everywhere from cropland, from animal feedlots, from homes, city streets, development, and it basically drains. When it rains, it drains into a creek or stream or river or other water body and ends up polluting that area. Another look at different types of non-point source pollution: farms, construction, neighborhoods, city and industry. Agriculture is a big part of non-point source pollution. Anywhere from if farmers completely, I went blank for a minute, sorry. When farmers plow their fields all the way down to the bare soil, when it rains, that soil can wash away. If there's no type of riparian area or anything stopping the soil and that run off the fields into a local creek or river, we can have non-point source pollution. And if cattle or other animals are allowed to get down into the creek, they can make the creek filthy by defecating or going to the bathroom of any type into the creek. And then that will also go down into local streams and rivers. Forestry, improper forestry, when they might clear cut an area, or clear cut an area too close to a stream, then you can start having erosion into that stream. Construction, also when they clear cut an area and all the mud, dirt can end up running into the streets. They are supposed to put up these fabric fences that we call silt fences, and that is supposed to hold the soil on that piece of property if they put them up correctly. But if they don't, then mud and water and stuff ends up going over the over or under the silt fence and ends up polluting our streams and rivers. Channelization is straightening a stream. When a stream is straightened, the water goes down it a lot faster. Normally a stream can meander and the water will go down it slower because it goes into those curves, but when it's straightened, that stream, the water goes down a lot faster and can end up causing erosion on the sides of the banks. Surface mining of minerals, sand, different types of things like that can be taken out of the ground, can end up having erosion off into the stream if silt fences or other protection isn't done. Household wastewater disposal or septic tanks, if they are not properly cared for, if they aren't pumped out once in a while, those pipes can break and end up with the sewage all over your yard. Urban and commercial. Golf courses and that with the fertilizer and pesticides can end up having waste end up washing into our streams and rivers. Washing your car on the street or in a parking lot or on even just your driveway, if you don't wash it close to and wash that soap into the grass, you will end up with all that soap and going down your driveway and into the street and down into what we call storm drains. Storm drains drain directly to a creek or a stream. They do not drain to the water treatment plant. So anything that goes down into the storm drain ends up in our local streams and rivers. Sedimentation can come from all different places, whether it's just erosion near a bridge, a field, along the stream banks, maybe from clear cutting or channelization. We can end up getting sediment into our streams and rivers easily. Litter. Litter is always a problem with people leaving things behind or throwing things out maybe a car window. And litter can cause all sorts of problems and is considered non-point source pollution. The Mississippi River is the third largest drainage basin in the world, and it drains 41% of the continental United States and 2 Canadian provinces, and it eventually empties into the Mississippi Sound, where freshwater and seawater mix. And what happens is all of that coming down the Mississippi River from all the different states ends up going down into the Gulf of Mexico and produces what we call a dead zone, an area of low oxygen, hypoxic, and basically nothing lives there, and it is a very toxic area of non-point source pollution. Some things we try to get commercial and people to do are what we call best management practices that will help reduce non-point source pollution. Everything from your silt fences or hay bales, to planting trees, to making sure you have some type of riparian area along the stream banks to help filter out anything coming across the land. Limited till, where you leave some of the root system when they take the crops off of the land, and it will help hold soil and filter out as things go across it. Contour planting. And even when in parking lots and that, having the curb area go down into the ground more, where water washes down into it instead of just along the side of it where there's a curb. Other practices individuals can do is everything from a litter cleanup to keeping your septic tanks clean, composting, mulching, recycling, planting trees, using pesticides and fertilizers wisely, reading the directions so that you use them properly and do not overuse them. So now that you're here, the word of the Lord seems perfectly clear. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Water. More than 70% of the Earth's surface is covered with water, and it exists in three matters of gas, solid, or liquid. The atomic structure of water is H2O. Water is attracted to other water through cohesion, and water is also attracted to other materials through adhesion. Water has unique physical properties. It has a high specific heat, a high surface tension, and water is a universal solvent, which is important because that's where we get the non-point source pollution, because water will mix with everything, and when it rains, it runs down the roads and into storm drains or into our creeks and rivers. The hydrological cycle: condensation, precipitation, surface runoff, infiltration, evaporation, transpiration, the groundwater. Know the different types and where they come in the hydrological cycle. Streams and lake ecosystems. When you have a running ecosystem, a flowing water, it's described as lotic. When you have standing water, it's described as a lentic ecosystem. Microorganisms in a lake or a stream can be described as an allotrochous material, which is, when it's allotrochous, it means that something is imported. It's introduced into the ecosystem. It comes from outside the stream or the river. Anything from organic material that washes into the streams, leaves, woody debris, dissolved nutrients from the soil that wash in. When it is produced in the ecosystem, it's considered an autotrochous material, and they create their own energy, like through photosynthesis. There are various light donations in a lake. A typical lake has distinct zones of biological communities linked to the physical structure of the lake and how much light penetrates it. Everything from your littoral zone to limnic to photic, benthic along the bottom, profundal. Different temperature stratifications are the epililium, which is the well-mixed surface layer, which is warm water and oxygen-rich. The metalilium, which is the transition zone of the large temperature change. And the hypolilium, which is the cold, unmixed bottom layer of oxygen pore zone, where a lot of the decomposition comes from. An aquifer is a layer of underground sand, soil, and rock that contains usable quantities of water. They contain what is commonly called groundwater. And there are two types of aquifers, an unconfined and confined. An unconfined aquifer gets its water from the surface. When it rains, the water penetrates down into the ground and fills up what we call the unconfined aquifer. The water table can change depending on how much water has penetrated down into the ground. The confined aquifer basically can only be recharged in certain areas. There is a very hard confining layer of clay, slate, something hard that cannot be penetrated through unless a well or something is drilled into it. that protects this confined aquifer layer. This aquifer layer gets recharged maybe hundreds of miles away, where it does come to the surface and the water can get down into it. The confined aquifer is not as prone to getting non-point source pollution in it as the unconfined aquifer, because the unconfined aquifer can get not only rainwater but also pollution that comes down into it from the surface. Water quality test. We test for temperature, pH, turbidity, and dissolved oxygen. You can test for other things like alkalinity, phosphorus, nitrogen, chlorides, fecal coliform. Temperature is how hot or cold the water is. The warmer the temperature, that you have a lower dissolved oxygen because of the fact that you end up with, as it evaporates. So warmer water or high salinity, you end up with lower dissolved oxygen. Colder water or lower salinity, you end up with higher dissolved oxygen. And dissolved oxygen is basically the molecules of oxygen in the water, which a lot of aquatic life use. They cannot use regular air. The pH scale. Aquatic life lives between about 6.5 and 8.5. Outside that range, you can start having different problems. Fish die. It affects their reproduction. Turbidity. Turbidity is how muddy or clear the water is, and how we test that or show that is through what we call a Secchi disc. And a Secchi disc is this black and white disc, like at the bottom of this canister. And you can, if you see that, the water is clearer. If you can't see it, you've got muddy water, but this is one of the ways we tell turbidity. We have different laws that protect water quality. Everything from the Federal Water Pollution Control Act of 1948, Clean Water Act, Safe Drinking Water Act, and Water Quality Act. So make sure you know the different parts of the hydrological cycle, different zones in the lake, and the different types of how we test for water quality, Secchi desk, all those types of things for our water quality segment. We are now going to do some watershed mapping. The particular map we're going to do is from the Bobo Bayou. Remember, you have 10 major watershed basins in the state of Mississippi. What we're also going to do is look at a map, and the contour lines on a quad map, they show us elevation, how the stream is flowing. The brown lines on a map, these little bitty lines, the light brown lines, are usually about 10 feet apart, and so you can get elevation from between the dark brown lines and the light brown lines, and the dark brown lines a lot of times will have an actual elevation. You're also looking at how these contour lines go on the quad map. The V's point upstream, so you can tell that the stream is coming from up here and coming down because of the fact that the V is basically pointing upstream, like if you looked up into a mountainside or something. You can see the contour lines on this map where this V goes that direction, so you notice the stream is going upstream. The same with this one. And you may not always see the blue stream, which is the blue dot dashes, but sometimes you still have the drainage from these areas because the V's are going up to the top of the mountainside. When we do watershed mapping, what we do is we just pick a particular point, and this is my point right here. that I'm going to start the mapping at. And what we're mapping, why we're mapping, is to kind of find out what is going on in our watershed. So we're going to map our watershed and find out where our watershed is on this particular map. And then anything that happens in this watershed can affect what's going on in this particular area. So you always start out with blue and you follow it upstream. You take the blue marker and you go upstream on the map. So, and you will map all the different blue lines that you will see. So that's our stream, and it's all these areas are draining to our particular point. Next, you find out where the other streams are on the map. And you will use a green marker. Anything that's past this point, you can mark in green. Then you look around the map for other streams that are flowing in a different direction. You have one here. Have another one over here, and you want to make sure that when you're marking the streams around your stream, you go all the way around it. You find something in each of the different areas. All right. Next, you look for what we call the hilltops. And you will look for hilltops between your stream and other streams. Hilltops are either round, like this area, or they're basically an enclosed area, small area that's enclosed at the top of a hill. They could be kind of an amoeba shape. Now you're looking for these hilltops between the green and the blue. So this hilltop right here, we would not mark with a red dot because of the fact that it's between the blue and it automatically will drain to your particular stream. So we go all the way around and make sure we find hilltops. You can also, if you can't find a hilltop between the blue and the green, you can go about halfway in between the blue and the green and mark an area. Or if there are roads in the area, they are usually on hilltops, so therefore you could mark something on that road, such as right through here. It's hard to find a particular hilltop, so I'm marking the road between the blue and the green. Once you're finished with marking your watershed, the hilltops, then you basically connect the dots. And there's your watershed. And why this is important is because of the fact, say you had a Walmart or something built here, right about here, and they aren't using silt fences, and you have all this mud coming down here. You can go and find that out and have somebody talk to them about putting up their silt fences. If the Walmart is being built over here, it won't affect your particular stream. So therefore, it doesn't really matter what's going on over there. So therefore, we want to know what's going on in our particular watershed. That's why we map the watershed. You use the blue for your stream, the green for other streams, and then the red to kind of mark the watershed. Now we're going to talk about macroinvertebrate identification. These are the bugs that tell what type of water quality we have in the, and tells whether we have good water quality, fair water quality, or poor water quality. Now, you can have poor water quality macroinvertebrates found in good water quality. Everything goes up. But you will not find good water quality macroinvertebrates, of course, in poor water quality, in water that is polluted in that. And you also have these insects down here at the bottom that we don't really consider any type of anything for water quality because of the fact that they are found usually on top of the water. They may dive down and come back up, and they breathe air. The other macroinvertebrates here all breathe dissolved oxygen, and so if there isn't very much dissolved oxygen or if there are other pollutants in the water, you will not find them. Hopefully, in a stream, you will find all sorts of different ones so that you can tell that you have good water quality. You also don't normally find these guys right in the middle so much of a stream unless it's really rocky or there's a tree or something laying over the stream. You will find these in vegetation over on the sides and or under rocks. And because of the fact that we use these for water quality is because they cannot move very far when something does happen to the water. If you notice, and as we go through each one in particular, they don't look like, say, these guys as dragonflies you would normally think of, because they are the nymphs, the immatures, the larva forms. So therefore, most of these are immatures, except for maybe your Riffle Beetle. You'll have an adult that is found in the water, whereas your mayflies and your stoneflies and caddisflies, as adults, they fly away. They can go somewhere else if there's any problem with the water quality. All right, we're now going to go through the different macroinvertebrates. You do need to know these by sight. So, whereas some of the other aquatic life, the plants in that, you can use a key, a dichotomous key. But we're going to start out with the caddisfly. Caddisflies are small aquatic macroinvertebrates. A lot of times you will see just the larvae form as a C-shaped. They have 3 pairs of legs. They have this hard top here that is kind of like a helmet area. Now sometimes you can also find them in a case, and you'll find these little feet coming out, and they'll have a case around them. Let's see. There we go. This one here has a little case, and you can maybe see the bug right here in front. And then this is a larva form that's not in the case, but you can kind of see the little bit of a C shape to it. The next one we're going to do is the stonefly. One thing about stoneflies is that they will have 2 tails. These also have 3 pairs of legs, a couple of antennae and that, but the one thing you will look for is the two tails, because when I talk about the mayflies here in a minute, they have three tails. And as you can see, you can see the two tails there on the stonefly. Like I said, mayflies have three tails. They can either have just this ribbing type of tail, or they can have some featheriness in between them. They have three pairs of legs. Sometimes you will see their feathery gills on the side when they're swimming in that. I'm wondering, let me see something. There we go. That might work better. You can see the three tails there behind the mayfly. Look for the three tails. Three tails are mayflies. Two tails are stoneflies. Next one I have is the Riffle Beetle. The Riffle Beetle, a lot of times you will see the adult in the water. You can have the immature, but which has three legs, three pairs of legs also. But mainly, a lot of times we will find the adult. The one thing I always call the adult Riffle Beetle is a water tick, because to me they look exactly like a little tick in the water. Whoops, let's see. That work better. There. That works better. This one is called a Helgamite. He has three pairs of legs, these filaments along the side. Underneath, you can see, if you turn them over, you can see the gill tufts on his bottom side. And they also have little pinchers here on the front. They are very predaceous. That means they eat other insects. And they're very aggressive. They will try to turn around and pinch you or bite you if they get a chance. Let's see. You can kind of see the three pairs of legs. The little filaments, and you can kind of see the pinchers up front. Now we have snails. I have two types of snails here. We have right-facing snails and left-facing snails. It is determined by where the opening is. One thing about the opening in that is that right-facing snails are found in good water quality or right water. Left-facing snails are found in poor water quality or lousy water. And if you look, oops. You can see that one opens to the left, and this one opens to the right. Now we're going to start on fair water quality macroinvertebrates. These guys will tolerate a little bit of pollution, unlike the ones we saw earlier, which are only for good water quality and they don't really like pollution at all. Crane fly larva, or we also call it a mosquito hawk because the adult looks kind of like a big mosquito. Crane fly larvae are kind of elongated, wormy looking, and they'll have these little tubers on the one end that you can kind of see. The little tubers on this side. Otherwise, they're just basically looks almost like a little worm. They have no legs, no prolegs, no types of legs at all. The next ones are the dragonflies and damselflies. They are related. Dragonflies, the adults are slightly different in the fact that dragonfly adults are kind of broad, large insects, and whereas the damselflies are the little bitty skinny ones, they're a lot smaller. They're not usually quite as colorful, but they are a lot of times iridescent. For dragonflies, and you can have them in a lot of different sizes, you have the 3 pairs of legs. The one looks more rounded, almost like a spider. They have big eyes. They can have more of an elongated body, kind of with like a pointed tail. Or this one is more rounded with the tail just kind of looks, it's more of a rounded, bigger body, almost spider-like. They have 3 pairs of legs and large eyes. And when they eat, they actually open up their mouth and stick it out like a bucket and pull things back in. They're also very predaceous. They eat other aquatic life. Damselflies also have large eyes, 3 pairs of legs, but their tail, they have more elongated tails, and they have 3 tails also, kind of like the mayfly, but their tails are very broad. They're very thick, they're broad, they might look like a, you can kind of see it here, they look more like a paddle. You can see the paddle, more tail like right here. Unlike the mayflies, which have the real skinny rib-like tails, these will be thicker, more paddle-like. So look for the difference between the tails. Scuds almost look like little shrimp. They're very small. They are side swimmers, so you will see them on their side. But they look a little bit like a little shrimp. But they're this small or smaller. They can be whitish color or possibly a little bit browner in that. Sow bugs, we kind of consider them like the roly-poly of the aquatic life. They have this kind of armor over them. And you can see their 2 little back tails. when you look at them. You can hopefully see there are a couple of little tails here in the more elongated body. Okay, here, I'll take it. Crayfish, crawfish, mudbug, they're all the same. Crawdad, they're all the same. It's just where you come from of what they might be called. Crayfish, you should be able to tell them because of the pinchers and the wide tail. There's the white tail. Shrimp are kind of more elongated. They have a thinner tail. You'll sometimes see the antenna for them. Now, a lot of times you need to make sure you look at these specimens, because if you notice, this crawfish is not a dark brown or anything. When they are put in alcohol, they lose a lot of their color. So therefore, they can look very similar to the shrimp if you just take a glance at them. Make sure when you look at them and if they are on a test that you can tell the difference between the two of them, regardless of what color they are. So those are your fair water quality macroinvertebrates. The last things we're going to talk about are the poor water quality macroinvertebrates. These guys tolerate about any type of water, but like I said, they can be found in good water quality or fair water quality. Along with the fair water quality, macroinvertebrates can also be found in good, but the good will not go down to any type of other more polluted water. A couple of the aquatics is the midge larva, which it's basically pretty straight. You have the little pro legs here, but you don't have three pairs of actual legs. Your aquatic worms that look like a worm, but in the water, and then leeches kind of are elongated, and you will notice when they move that they kind of stretch out, and then they come together. I have a couple of midges and a worm. There's your worm. These midges here are just, they look like just long little, almost short little worms, where your worm is more to it. I said earlier that you have a few adult bugs that are not considered anything for water quality because of the fact that they are found on top of the water and they breathe air. So therefore, and they can move a lot further than a lot of the others that are immatures, and they are basically stationary to where they are found. One of the ways we look for macroinvertebrates in the water is that we take what we call a D net, as you can tell, the letter D, and we will bump along the edges in the habitat and pull this out and then see what we might find down at the bottom. We dump it into a tray a lot of times and start watching for things to swim. So this is one of the ways, besides a seining net that usually crosses a creek. You put it down in the creek, or a plankton net, but this is a large way of how we end up looking for our macroinvertebrates. There are a few fish that you need to know by sight. your bluegill, largemouth bass, spotted bass, white or black crappie, catfish, and a sturgeon. Besides, you only need to know the common names and not the scientific names, but you also need to be able to tell what family they are in. That it should be basically pretty easy because your bluegills, your largemouth bass, your spotted bass, and your crappies are all in the family Centrarcidae. But your catfish and your sturgeons, catfish is in Ecology, which you all should probably know pretty much what a catfish looks like. I'm not going to ask you which type of catfish it is, just that it's a catfish. And then your sturgeons are pretty distinctive also. And that family is Accipitidae. So if you see a sturgeon, you know it's one family, catfish is another, and then the others are all in the same family. This book is a great little resource. It was put together by the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, one of the biologists up at the Enid Hatchery, and you can download the book easily from the department's website. So it has the bluegill, it has the crappie, it will tell you the different distinguishing characteristics between like the white and black and the bluegills and the spotted bass. So this would be a great resource for you to study the fish so that you can be able to identify them later. The other thing you will need to know for aquatics is the various aquatic plants. Some of these might be easier to know by sight, but we will usually ask you how to identify the plants through a dichotomous key. You will go down the list and hopefully come up with the right answer at the very end. This website is a great website to just be able to look up the different types of aquatic life, aquatic plants, and it will help with identification, looking at different things that you can be able to determine some of the different plants that you will find and you will have to identify. To end with, I wanted to give you information about how to contact me if you have any questions about anything that I've gone over for the aquatics test. I know there's a lot of different things, and most of what I've gone over is pretty much what's going to be on the hands-on testing. There's quite a bit of information also to go through regarding the written test. But if you have questions, you can contact me at either this email or phone number. Also, if you are interested, I can send you a folder that has a lot of this information that I usually give out. It has a lot of the information, some of the definitions, the different parts of a fish, which we didn't go over, how to, all the different equipment, stuff about chemistry and how to assess the water quality, more information about non-point source pollution, a picture for the bugs, the macroinvertebrates. If you are interested in one of these, email me and I can send it out, but it'd probably have to go out snail mail because of the fact that there's a lot of information to try to send over the internet. So I'll be happy, though, to answer any questions if anybody ever has any, and just shoot me an email or give me a call.